The victim was Peter Porco, who was found dead right behind the front door of his home, while his wife lay in bed, barely breathing. Who committed this tragedy? What hatred drove the perpetrator to brutally attack the Porco couple? This is the Porco family. The man on the far right is Peter Porco, the family's breadwinner, and the woman on the left is his wife, Joan Porco. Their happy marriage is reflected in their two smart and energetic sons. Looking at those bright smiles, no one could have imagined that nearly 20 years later, a horrific tragedy would shatter this family. In 2004, in Delmar Village, Albany County, New York, Peter, then 52, was working as a court clerk. Joan was a talented researcher in children's speech pathology, meticulous and responsible in her work. Their two sons were already adults. Jonathan, serving in the Navy, and Christopher, a university student. Their upbringing balanced softness and discipline, with Joan offering love and Peter playing the role of a strict father when needed. After 16 years, the Porco family still radiated laughter and happiness. Even living far from their sons, they felt fulfilled seeing their children grow up with bright futures. Their peaceful life was admired by neighbors until that fateful day in late 2004. On the morning of November 15, 2004, Peter did not show up at the courthouse, which was unusual. His colleague Michael, a police officer, decided to check on him after several attempts to reach Peter by phone failed. Michael arrived at Peter's house, noticed the keys still in the door, and forced it open, only to find Peter's lifeless body behind it. The police found Joan Porco barely breathing in the bedroom, with severe head injuries similar to her husband's. Miraculously, she was still alive, giving hope that she might identify the attacker. While the medical staff were fighting to save Joan's life, investigators urgently collected evidence in the house. They discovered that the bathroom was still wet. A blood-covered razor had been discarded on the sink, and there were bloodstains on the stairs. In the kitchen, the coffee cup on the table was still warm. The dishwasher was running, and a lunchbox had just been prepared. These signs indicated that someone had just performed everyday actions such as shaving, making coffee, and preparing lunch things. The perpetrator would surely have neither the time nor the reason to do. A reasonable hypothesis at this point is that Mr. Peter carried out his usual morning routines, as he did every day before leaving the house. The police suspected whether Mr. Peter was killed before or after going downstairs. They determined that both Mr. Peter and Mrs. Joan were attacked in the bedroom, when they found a blood-stained pillow next to her, and a trail of blood leading from the bedroom to downstairs. Mr. Peter might have acted unconsciously due to severe brain trauma, carrying out his morning routines like making coffee and fetching the newspaper before collapsing. However, the perpetrator who caused Peter's injury remains unidentified. While searching the scene, police noticed signs of a break-in, but valuables were untouched. They also found a torn mosquito net on the window, but it can't open more than 3.9 inches, making entry through it impossible. This led to the theory that the perpetrator entered through another means and staged the scene to mislead investigators. How the intruder entered remains unclear. Detective Boris speculated that the abnormal behavior of the perpetrator might stem from psychological instability or personal conflicts with the Porco family. He questioned Michael, the colleague who reported the case, about any suspicious relations of the victims. Michael said Joan was kind, while Peter had conflicts with two individuals, but both had alibis. The home's security system had been disabled. and the family dog was locked in the basement, suggesting the perpetrator was familiar with the family. Detective Boris questioned Joan while she was being treated. She shook her head at the mention of Jonathan, but nodded when Christopher's name came up. Police immediately searched for Christopher, but he contacted them first, appearing strangely calm, unlike Jonathan. The police interrogated both of them. Jonathan had an alibi, as he was on duty aboard a submarine more than 310 miles away from New York. Christopher claimed he was in the dormitory, but none of his roommates saw him that night. Christopher denied any involvement, and while the police were certain, based on the signs, that he was the perpetrator, they still needed more evidence to verify the truth. With insufficient evidence to charge Christopher, police continued investigating him. According to relatives and friends, Christopher had a history of petty theft, selling stolen items on eBay. During his time working at a veterinary hospital, he was suspected of stealing electronics to sell online. Police also found out he had been using his brother's identity to apologize to clients, claiming his brother had died, and they were unable to deliver the goods to the customer. At university, Christopher continued lying about his wealthy background and lived extravagantly. His declining academic performance led to warnings from the school, but he hid it from his family. When Peter found out and scolded him, Christopher shifted the blame onto the school. He even tricked his father into providing banking information, forging his signature to borrow $31,000, using some for tuition and the rest for his friends. Christopher's deception was exposed when Peter received a bank notice about the $31,000 loan and the purchase of a car in his name. Though angry, Peter expressed concern in an email, threatening not to forgive Christopher if he repeated the offense, but still wished to resolve the issue. Christopher's deception was exposed when Peter received a bank notice about the $31,000 loan and the purchase of a car in his name. Though angry, Peter expressed concern in an email, threatening not to forgive Christopher if he repeated the offense, but still wished to resolve the issue. To strengthen their case, police reviewed school security footage and highway recordings. They found that on the night of the crime, Christopher's yellow Jeep left the university and headed toward his parents' house, coinciding with the time the home's alarm system was disabled. On November 15, 2004, after the Porco's phone line was cut at 4:59 a.m., a camera at the University of Rochester recorded a yellow Jeep returning to the parking lot at 7:30 a.m. Police identified the vehicle as Christopher's. A witness reported seeing the yellow Jeep near the Porco's home, and his dashcam captured a blurry image of it. Though the car was seen near the crime scene, police needed to confirm Christopher was driving. When they checked his E-ZPass, no record was found. The E-ZPass had been removed and discarded on the car floor. Police found his fingerprints on one of 12 paper toll tickets, proving he drove to the Porco house that night. However, when Joan awoke after surgery, she had no memory of the incident and refused to believe her son was involved. During the trial, she defended her son, submitting a petition to stop the investigation and declaring him innocent. Nonetheless, justice had to be served, unclouded by a mother's love. Despite Joan's best efforts, she could not save her son. On December 12, 2006, Christopher was sentenced to 50 years without parole after police provided sufficient evidence. Though some experts suggested psychological issues led to the crime, no reason could justify his actions. Christopher is serving his sentence at Clinton Prison, still maintaining his innocence. Even after 20 years, Joan still tries to gather money to bail Christopher out, but she has been unsuccessful. Ultimately, Peter, a devoted husband and father, was killed by his own son, and heartbreakingly, his wife changed her testimony out of love for Christopher. Even if we are family, we cannot cover up each other's crimes, as the law and justice must be respected. Blind protection only leads to painful consequences, not just for the victim but also for the loved ones involved. Every problem in life has a better solution than resorting to violence and murder. Instead of choosing the path of crime, we should seek understanding, support each other, and resolve conflicts peacefully.